All right, welcome back to the Rice Report, everybody. Eric Rice here. So good to see you all again. As always, we're joined by very interesting guests from all different walks of life, and we cover the three topics you're not supposed to talk about ever in the real world: money, politics, and religion, although everyone seems to be talking about politics, and thankfully, more people are starting to talk about religion. Today, we are joined by Christina Bobb, journalist, lawyer, author. She has a new book out. We're going to talk about that near the end, but we're going to talk about some of the lawfare and some of the important cases that are happening around the country right now because they're getting very little coverage, and I think they're extremely important. So welcome, and thank you for coming here today, Christina. I appreciate you being here.
Thanks so much for having me, Eric.
Well, what's going on with the Fani Willis case?
Yeah, well, great ruling out of the Georgia Supreme Court Tuesday. It said it denied Fani Willis's petition for review. So she had been disqualified at the Court of Appeals. The Court of Appeals said that she is no longer allowed to pursue this case. So she was disqualified. The case has been stalled out. And she appealed up to the Georgia Supreme Court requesting that decision to be overturned. And just Tuesday, the Georgia Supreme Court said, no, we're not interested in hearing your appeal. So that means the lower court's ruling stands and she is disqualified, which is great. The case is still open. What that means for the case and the, 15 to 20 defendants that are in the case, what it means for them is they have to wait and see if there's another prosecutor from a different office, because it was Fani Willis and her entire office that was disqualified. So is there
Her
another
entire office?
Yeah, right.
Amazing.
Because they were all working with her. So yeah, her whole office was disqualified because she oversees them. So they were all disqualified. So there's got to be another district attorney somewhere in the state of Georgia to take the case. I would be shocked if any of them actually wanted to pick up her garbage. But we got to wait and see if anybody does. I think that's probably a no. And then if no prosecutor picks it up, then the case will be dismissed for failure to prosecute.
And what does that mean for the state of Georgia for this process? What does this translate what that means to Americans in general?
Well, it's good news in the sense that these 15 to 20 people who have been wrongfully prosecuted, illegally prosecuted, they get their lives back, which is great. We've seen a lot of injustice coming at conservatives, myself included. I'm a criminal defendant as we speak, looking forward to my case getting dismissed, hopefully in the near future. But the left has been relentlessly coming after us. We started complaining about it, I don't know, a decade or so, maybe a decade or so ago, about censorship and saying, oh, Google's censoring conservatives, or, social media is censoring conservatives. And then that got really heated during COVID, and conservatives were saying, hey, I'm losing followers. Like they're hemorrhaging my followers and they're silencing me and they're shadow banning me. And we were crying about censorship and it didn't stop us. Our message was still getting out. People were still speaking out. And so then it shifted to they had to throw us all in jail, make us look like criminals, call us Nazis, call us racist, justify why it's appropriate to actually harm us and our lives. And so many of us, myself included, have been immensely harmed. And then they tried to bankrupt us through frivolous lawsuits and frivolous cases, not just throwing us in jail, but suing us and, claiming all sorts of claims against many, many conservatives that cost time and money to fight. And then when that didn't work and that didn't stop us, they tried to kill Donald Trump, and then they killed Charlie Kirk. And they're just getting more and more aggressive because their tactics aren't working anymore. And so this court ruling is immensely important to help free those of us that have been targeted by the left, to help free the conservatives in Georgia that have been targeted.
Yeah, I don't think people realize how communist this process is. This is exact playbook of the Bolsheviks in Russia.
100%.
They
Yeah.
used lawfare against everyone. They claimed everyone was, something else. They opened up the prisons and the mental institutions. That actually happened the last 5 years. We've seen no criminals go to jail. That's the same thing
Right.
as opening up the prisons. So like this whole process, I think people attribute most of the left anyway says this is the Nazis. This is Bolshevik stuff. This
Yeah.
is directly from the Marxist playbook, Rules for Radicals. It's exactly the playbook from Rules for Radicals.
Yeah. And then they have brainwashed the left into believing that they're morally superior.
Yes.
Right. And so it justifies why it's okay to take out Charlie Kirk. I mean, the initial reaction from the left after the Charlie Kirk assassination was appalling.
Yeah.
I mean, the idea that you would cheer an assassination, and not just one person, a lot of people cheered. It's inhumane.
Yeah.
And so if people believe it's okay to kill and murder, then, who cares if we get thrown in prison, or who cares if we're taken down from social media? It just justifies the horrific actions that they're taking towards everyday Americans. I mean, Charlie Kirk, he was special. He was very famous. He was extraordinarily well connected politically, incredibly influential. He had a massive following. And that's why his assassination has had the ramifications that it has. But what about those of us that nobody knows?
Right.
The lawfare, and I know people that have lost their homes, that have
Yeah.
lost their families because the pressure, the financial pressure and the legal pressure was too much, that it cost relationships, and nobody knows. No one's reporting about that. No one's crying for them. And so it's so important to get this straightened out.
I couldn't agree more. This country's a mess. It really is a mess, and people are
Hmm.
weaponizing systems that are supposed to be protecting us against us.
Yeah.
But what happened in Michigan? We were talking about that off camera a little bit about another ruling in Michigan. What happened there?
Yes. So after the 2020 election, really after the 2022 election, most of the charges came down in 2023 and 2024, with the exception, I think Fani Willis came down in 2022, I
Hmm.
think. But
2022.
yeah, in Michigan, they filed charges against the alternate electors in Michigan. They did it in Wisconsin, they did it in Nevada, and they did it in Arizona as well. The alternate electors and people associated with Donald Trump. Not everybody was an elector, but certainly all the electors were charged. And in Michigan last week, the court ruled. So that case has been going on for over 2 years. And finally, the court in Michigan dismissed the case, saying everything that they did was perfectly lawful and legal, and they were just exercising their constitutional rights. So amazing ruling, great ruling from a Black female judge appointed by a Democrat governor. So before people get all upset, saying it was the judge actually had an incredibly fair ruling.
Wow.
And I'm so
You don't hear
grateful
that
to
every
this.
day.
I know. I mean, she's quite honestly
Fair
one.
rulings in America.
Right. And she really did a fair job. And so that brought me a lot of hope, honestly, that, like, okay, not every judge is compromised. Even if they don't agree with us, not every judge is compromised. So yeah, she made a very good ruling. But that case was just thrown out last week.
And I don't think people give enough credit to the corruption in the court system. I talk about this quite a bit on social
Yeah.
media, on this podcast, that you can have the best intentions and try to follow the Constitution, follow the law, but these rulings are very unconstitutional in many cases. And
Yeah.
some of the good rulings we're seeing, like Chevron deference and things like
Yeah.
that, those aren't even being implemented. That ruling was there, but yet we
And then
still
they
have an
ignore it.
EPA. Yeah,
Yeah.
completely ignore
Right.
it.
Right. Well, you're right. And I don't know if it's corruption. I'm sure there is some level of corruption, or cowardice is the other
Sure.
aspect to this. And I think a lot of the judges don't want to be the sole decision maker for something like a political operation to criminalize conservatism. I mean, that's what they did after the 2020 election. They tried to scare people into believing that if you have conservative values, you're going to be labeled a criminal and you're going to be prosecuted. And so, well, I mean, you can have the values, you just can't tell anybody about it or actually do anything.
Yeah, or live
Um,
them out. You can't
or
do that
live them
either.
out. You can't do that. Right. Just having the values is fine, but just don't do anything with them. And I think the judges were scared to be the ones to take that on. And so that's why I'm so grateful for what I can only assume is a liberal judge, but that's probably not a fair. I assume that because she was appointed by a Democrat governor, um, but she gave a very fair ruling.
But she's a judge, and all
Yep.
judges take on the responsibility with the role of the job of making tough decisions. That is the job of a judge.
Yep.
So when you have cowardice on a council, or somebody sitting in front of a courtroom who signed up for a lifetime of making tough decisions, not making tough decisions, that to me is scarier than any political corruption, any
Yeah.
narrative modification, or media corruption. When the courts can't make decisions because they're cowards, or
Yep.
because they're corrupt, we
Yeah.
have a much deeper problem in America.
You're completely right. If the judges don't want to call balls and strikes, then they need to get off the bench. I mean,
And
if
how
you're
do
not
we
going to
get them
make the
off?
call, well,
I know federal judges, there's really nothing we can do. They're a lifetime appointee.
Well, they're lifetime appointee, but they can be impeached. I mean, we're supposed to have checks and balances in this country. And the way you check the judicial branch is through impeachment. Um, Congress has the ability to impeach these federal judges, but they aren't doing it. The hard part right now is you need 66% of the Senate to convict in an impeachment, which
Right.
you're not going to have, 15, 16 senators from the Democrat side impeach a Democrat judge who's doing their bidding. So we've got to clean up our elections. We've got to get a supermajority back in the Senate and impeach some of these judges that just are blatantly not following the law and using their positions, what I would say illegally or unconstitutionally, to benefit a political party. So that's the federal side. But then on the state side, it depends. Every state is a little bit different, but some of these judges are elected.
Yeah.
And thank God there are groups popping up that are actually investigating the judges so that you can have a good, kind of primer on judges in your area of who you should vote for, who you shouldn't vote for. There's a lot of political considerations that way. But the judges that are up for election are obviously easier to get rid of if they're not good because you can vote them out.
And I learned something. So I'm not a lawyer and have no interest in being a lawyer. I don't know how anyone does it. That's just not for me. I'm a businessman. But one thing that I learned in the last couple of weeks is that we have some judges that are, magistrate judges that don't
Yeah.
even have legal degrees. Like, how is that even part of the American legal process? How can someone without a
Yeah.
legal degree make a legal decision?
I'm not gonna lie, I didn't know that either. I thought
Wow.
every judge had to be a lawyer. I mean, that appeared to be a state law that you could appoint anybody, I guess. I think that was in North Carolina, right? Or yeah, that
It's
was in
in
North Carolina.
32 states have magistrate judges. I looked that up.
Well, but yes, you could, but there's a difference between a magistrate. Most magistrates are lawyers. So I didn't know that I was unaware that there were states that had magistrates that are not lawyers. So,
And we only found that out because the guy killed a Ukrainian woman
right,
on a train. That's the only way we
right.
found that out. That's
Yeah,
nuts.
it's very bizarre. It is very, very bizarre. But to be honest, now don't get me wrong, I'm proud to be an attorney and I'm proud of law school and passing the bars and all that stuff. But I don't think you had to do any of that to look at the guy who had been, I think, arrested 14 times prior and say, you know what, maybe he's a danger to society.
Yeah.
I don't think you need to be a lawyer to do that. So, yeah, it's a bit shocking that we have all these magistrates that aren't actually lawyers. But why are they missing common sense? I mean,
Well,
any
they're corrupt.
idiot,
I mean, let's be
I
honest. Yeah.
guess, yeah, they're doing bidding of somebody else. But any idiot could have looked at that guy and said, "Yeah, no, he needs to stay confined. He does not belong on the streets."
There's an old
So
saying, there's nothing more dangerous than a fool with power, right? Like that.
exactly, that's
And
exactly
we are
right.
putting fools in position of power, and we've been doing this for 50 years. This isn't
Yeah,
a new thing. We've been doing this throughout all of this country for 50 years because we are in the middle of a Bolshevik revolution.
yeah.
And I don't
No,
think
I think
people
that's right.
understand that.
I think that's right. And this is more so my first book than my current book that's just come out. But in my first book, I talk about I blame Republicans for a lot of it because if
Sure.
Democrats are the gas and Republicans are the brake, our brakes failed, which is why the left is careening off a cliff. The Republicans absolutely failed to hold the line on true fundamental conservative constitutional values.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
but
I will state this to anyone in politics when they come on here. I belong to neither party. I don't believe in either party. I think George Washington said it best about two political parties.
yeah,
But I was a Republican for most. I've never voted Democrat in my life. I just don't. If people
yeah.
can't answer yes or no questions, why do you vote for them? And that's kind of the Democrat playbook. But in this like I was part of the IRS weaponization during Obama. I was audited all 8
Oh,
years because I'm
oh
white,
my gosh.
Republican, registered Republican, and a business owner. In the IRS office in Glendale, California, there were 12 white men sitting there, and I asked them questions. All of us were white Republican business owners, and all of us were being audited. So I kind of saw what was going on there.
Oh my gosh.
It hasn't ended. Every year they just magically tell me I owe them more money. But when that happened, I was like, why is no one protecting us? Like, why is no
Yeah,
Republican going? Why are all these Republicans being audited during Obama? And it's just gotten worse. And I think most of the country, and it's starting to turn. I think we can start to see the tide turn a little bit because
yeah,
their hand is being forced through social media. Otherwise, I
yeah.
think they still would be the same. What do
Mhm.
we do about cleaning this up? I mean, even the fact that we have a gas and a brake as two political parties, shouldn't we have some sort of engine instead of just the gas and the brake, like some sort of middle line party or
Yeah.
non-associated party? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think the middle ground is on the right at this point. And I'm not talking about Republicans. I totally support the idea of not liking either party and that's fine. But on on the issues, on the policy issues, with very few exceptions. And I actually can only think of one, but there's probably more. Republicans have the common sense approach on
Oh,
every
sure.
issue. And so at this point, I think, like if a ship is capsizing one direction, you push hard the other direction to try to straighten it out. And I think that's what we're seeing right now. I think we're pushing hard to the right, um, because we've gone so far left that we're in danger of failing as a nation.
Yeah,
And
the
so we're
captain's quarters are flooded at this point. Yeah.
totally. And so we're trying to straighten it out. And I think we will, and I think we can. It's going to be painful and scary and all the things, but
Sure.
I think we can straighten it out, but we need to reverse course from a lot of these liberal policies. And I think that's what Donald Trump is trying to do. Um, Reduce the power of government. I love the fact that Lisa Cook is fighting her firing, because now we're going to have a Supreme Court ruling saying that the president is actually in control of the Federal Reserve. And he's hopefully going to be
I was
forcing
going to
some
ask you
policy
about that.
changes there. Yeah, I mean, you know more about it than I do. That's probably more your realm than mine. I just like the legal case.
Yeah.
But
Well, it's
but
obvious
yeah,
our Federal Reserve, our Federal Reserve, there's three fundamental truths. It's not federal. It's not part of the country. There's no reserves. That's our money.
correct,
And
correct.
and in the middle of it all, it's certainly not independent. I mean, that was
Correct. It's benefiting
super obvious.
somebody. We just don't see it. We pretend like it's run by the government, but it's not run by the
No.
government. But it should be run by the government. So I think we're going to get a Supreme Court ruling out of that case, which everybody who was supporting Lisa Cook in her lawsuit is probably going to regret.
Yeah.
But I think we'll get it. I hope we get it.
Well, and it'll prove a case. So like we can prove that they are a political engine now. Like that was obvious
Right.
during Biden. That was obvious that they're a political engine, keeping rates wherever the president wanted rates. Right before an election, we had a 50 basis
Yeah.
point drop, right? That's political. But I think that we will show that it's political on both sides. Like Donald Trump has every right to fire for cause, to get rid
Mhm.
of a governor. And I think what this case is going to show is that it's not an independent board. And if it's not an
Well,
independent board, we should remove them from this country, where there should be no Federal Reserve.
yeah, no, I completely agree with that. I fully support that position. At the very least, if the people elected Donald Trump or Joe Biden, although I challenge the accuracy of that election result, but let's assume,
Tremendously, yeah.
um, the person who the people elected should be running it. It either shouldn't exist at all, or the person
Bingo.
who's supposed to be running the government should be running it. So one, I'm fine with either result. I would prefer for it to go away, but either way, as long as it's not run by independent people for their own personal gain at the expense of taxpayers. I mean, that's the worst possible solution, and that's what we've been living with for over 100 years.
Yes. And here's the interesting fact about a Federal Reserve that most people overlook. Page 5 of Karl Marx' Communist Manifesto. On page 5,
Yep.
it specifically says, in order
Control the
to
money.
absolutely, well, credit creation, monetary policy, monetary creation. The Federal Reserve, Americans, is a communist construct that we
Yep.
bow down to on a daily basis, and they should not exist in a free country. And that's not coming from
Right.
me. That's coming from the inventor of modern communism, Karl Marx.
Yeah, no, I think you're right.
That would be the biggest boom for American economy, for American faith. All right, like
For the
people would
little guys, for the little
absolutely.
little guys in America, we would all do so much better if you didn't have who knows who pulling the strings at the Federal Reserve.
And you hit the nail on the head, the little guys, because the
Mhm.
big guys want the Federal Reserve.
Yes.
They love the Federal Reserve. They love
Yep.
being next to the money printer because it's free money for them.
Yep.
If you look at the deficit, and you look at the wealth of the top 1% of America, it's almost an identical number.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know
It's
that.
it's so imbalanced, and that free money printer allows a lot of free money to go around to a lot of cronies, and this has been happening since before any of us were born.
Oh yeah, 100 years at least.
Yeah, yeah. Interesting topic. Great topic for a book or for something that you do online or something.
Yeah.
Exposing the fact, because you have a much larger audience. Expose the fact that the Federal Reserve is communist, and we can't claim to be a free country when foreigners control our policy, or privateers control our monetary policy. It's not possible to be free.
Right.
So let's get into your book. You got a
Yeah.
new book out. This is your
Yes.
is this your fifth or sixth book?
Oh no, this is my second.
Second, but there's a whole
Yeah.
bunch of them online.
Oh yeah, no, those are all fake. Sorry. Make sure you check the author that it's
I
just
ordered
Christina
fake
Bobb.
books. All right. So
No.
yes.
Oh shoot. I thought you meant you ordered. Oh man. Cancel
No,
it. Cancel the order.
I will. I'll go back and do that today. Well, talk
Yeah.
to us
And
about the new.
report it. Report it because
They allow
Yeah,
fake books?
I guess. I mean, yeah.
Wow.
No, it's just the two. It's Stealing Your Vote was my first one that came
Yep.
out in 2023, and then Defiant, the forward by Donald Trump. That's my current one that just came out last week.
Well, let's talk about Defiant. What
Yes.
can readers expect?
Um, so I'm so excited. So I was President Trump's custodian of records for Mar-a-Lago. I was one of his staff attorneys. I was on site during the raid, and I was sucked into all of the lawfare, both Jack Smith investigations. I'm currently a criminal defendant in Arizona for my work that I did with Rudy Giuliani post 2020. And
Why
I
are
mean,
you a criminal defendant?
that's a great question, and that's what I've been arguing to the court. I was a journalist at the time, actually, but I had volunteered to help Rudy with the litigation following the 2020 election, and they roped me into the alternate electors case, which is very bizarre because I was never in Arizona during the relevant time period. I never spoke with any of the electors about the electors. I did talk to one of them. She was the GOP chairwoman, but I was a reporter and I was doing an interview with her about the election. But that's the extent of my communication. I never emailed anybody in Arizona. I never texted anybody in Arizona about the electors. So, yeah, great question. Why? What was my crime? In the indictment, my crime is listed as being closely associated with Rudy Giuliani.
So that's a criminal offense to be closely associated with someone who hasn't been proven guilty? Like,
Yeah,
wow.
yeah,
Wow, you got named as a criminal defendant because I do remember you covering the story. I
yeah. I
remember
was a
watching you on
reporter.
TV. Yeah.
Yeah, I was a reporter covering it, and they indicted me for my reporting. And when they said, you have to have these initial disclosures, they disclose to the defendants all the supposed evidence that they have against you. It was all my reports. I got indicted for my reporting.
Wow.
Hmm.
Wow. So when this case is over, because clearly you're not
Hopefully,
gonna,
it's on its
yeah,
yeah.
you need to fight back on that. That's an absolutely violation of a First Amendment rights.
First Amendment. I mean, all kinds of civil rights. Yeah, I'm making a list.
I'm sure it's
I've
like
got a
nice and
list.
long.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, keep
yeah.
talking to us about the book. So I know
Yeah.
that the you were there during the Mar-a-Lago raid, which is,
Right.
you
So
know,
I walk you through everything from start to finish, from the grand jury subpoena asking for the records from the president, to my communications with the president's defense team, to my communications with the Department of Justice and FBI. I've got the text messages, the emails in there. You can see the whole thing and make up your own mind. I'm pretty sure you will agree with me that there was never any probable cause. Donald Trump was lawfully and legally entitled to everything that he had.
yeah.
He was incredibly cooperative. He never tried to hide anything. He was very forthcoming. And they were clearly out to try to create a crime where no crime existed, and they were doing it for political purposes. And what I think people failed to recognize initially in 2022 when all this was happening, and I don't think the media covered it well, was that the original grand jury was in Washington, D.C. So I lived in Florida, worked in Florida, met with the president in Florida, met with DOJ in Florida, the raid was in Florida. All of my participation was in Florida. But I was subpoenaed and had to come to Washington, D.C. to testify and to get interrogated and interviewed by Department of Justice and FBI because they were trying to concoct some sort of like Hillary Clinton email scandal surrounding the president, but they never had probable cause for it. And so they could not get a grand jury indictment of Donald Trump in Washington, D.C. because they didn't have probable cause of any crime. And so that's why the case shifted to Florida because they couldn't get an indictment in Washington, D.C. And so they had to bring it down in Florida, shift everything to Florida and create this stupid obstruction of justice case that everybody knew it wasn't going to go anywhere. But they had to do it to save face because by this point they had already raided Mar-a-Lago and the world was looking at them going, why'd you raid Mar-a-Lago? And so they had to justify it with a criminal case. And so that's why they did it in Florida.
And what was the raid like? I mean, were you prepared for it? Was it a complete shock, or
Oh, it was a complete shock. It was very surreal. Like I could not believe what was happening. I mean, there were dozens, probably 3 dozen agents there. Um, they were incredibly arrogant. I give you all of the dialogue, all of my back and forth with them, with the U.S. attorney on site, with the assistant U.S. attorney on site. Um, they genuinely thought they could just do whatever they wanted and nobody could ever do anything about it. I don't think they ever saw this day coming. But yeah, they were incredibly arrogant.
And most of them still work at the FBI.
I don't know. I've been told that a lot of them have been fired. I think most of them have been fired, as they should have been fired.
Yes, of course.
Um, I'm, I don't have the roster. I don't know who was fired and who
Right.
wasn't fired, but I think a lot of them have been fired, rightfully,
Yeah, so one
rightfully
of my
fired.
concerns is that, our FBI has something like
Yeah,
38,000. First of all, our FBI has 38,000 employees. That would make it a top, 100 company in the
yeah,
country. And
yeah.
yet we can't solve any real crimes. Like,
Right.
we have major issues there and it needs to be cleaned out and good people need to be reinstalled there, or that
Yeah,
government agency needs to shrink because our government has too much power.
a hundred
Lar-
percent.
Largest
Yeah,
employer in the history of the world is the United States government. That is a scary thing that Americans don't realize from time to time, is just how
yep,
big our government has grown.
yep.
And in this raid, so you have guys coming in with guns drawn.
Actually, no, they did not have. So people didn't realize that when President Trump, I think it was either on Truth Social or through his Save America email blast, he put out the statement that Mar-a-Lago was being raided. The raid was over at that point. The FBI never announced it. DOJ never announced it. And if you remember, for 3 days after the raid, they were refusing to take responsibility for it. I
Yes.
mean, the White House was going, "Oh, we had no idea. They were playing stupid for 3 days. We have no idea how Mar-a-Lago got raided. That is so weird. How did that happen?" And then it wasn't until August 11th, which was 3 days later, that Merrick Garland finally came forward and was like, "Yeah, yeah, I approved it." And he held a very, very sheepish press conference that was quite pathetic, in my opinion.
His
Um,
entire 4 years was pathetic. There's
if
literally
that's true.
nothing, everything he did was pathetic.
Yeah, he's an impish little man. But anyway, but his presser was very, very bad. And I genuinely believe they thought they could keep it a secret. And I explain that in the book. I explain why I think they were trying to keep it a secret in the book. I give you all um, the details in there. But that's just my assessment of it. Is I think they thought they could keep it secret and use it when they wanted to use it to try to make Donald Trump look guilty. I don't think they ever calculated the idea that Donald Trump may announce it himself.
And the strange part is that everyone online within minutes of it knew that the president has every right to have any record he pleases.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's the shocking thing to me, is how you could have any probable cause for something that's very clear to be law. The president can have
Yeah.
any classified or declassified document he wants. That's part of
Yeah.
being the president.
Yeah, you're exactly right. There was no crime. There quite literally was no crime.
And it reminds me of of course, the story of Bill Clinton came up with his sock drawer or whatever it
Yep.
may be, and nothing's ever happened to Clinton.
Well, yeah, because the court ruled there, and good on you for knowing that case. I mentioned that in the book as well. But I'm at Judicial Watch now, and that was the Judicial Watch versus Nara case, the
Mm,
Clinton sock drawer case, and it was Amy Berman Jackson. This was in 2012, an Obama appointee, who said it's the president and only the president who gets to decide what he takes and what he leaves. Not even the archivist can tell him what he needs to return. Well,
right.
this case was brought by the archivist. So they were in very clear violation of well established law that had been established for well over a decade. And actually, one of my colleagues now was the attorney that argued that case for Judicial Watch, which of course they lost. They were trying to get access to the Clinton records and they were told no. When he was making his argument, he said that the court actually kind of joked with him. And she said, "What do you want me to do? Have the FBI raid the Clinton residence?" And everybody in the courtroom kind of laughed because it's like, that's ridiculous. No.
And it
Um,
plays out a decade later.
yep, that's exactly right.
It's amazing to watch this stuff happen, and thank you for all you guys are doing at Judicial Watch,
Mhm.
because there has been some really good stuff that has come out of you, and
Yeah.
we need more people. I think for so many decades, I remember being a kid. I never cared about any of this stuff. I didn't even care about politics really until about 2018, when I started to realize just how
How bad it was
strongly
getting. Yeah.
the propaganda was just so thick. You'd watch two news networks, because I've always been down the middle. But you'd watch two news networks, the same event would happen, and you'd have polar opposite stories of who was at fault and how it began. And then I have friends from all over the world, and called a friend of mine from China, who's an American now, and I said, "Are you watching the news?" And he goes, "You still do that?" And I'll never forget him saying that. I go, "What do you mean?" And he goes, "Don't you know it's lying to you? This is how it works." And I was like, wow, I was
Yep.
ignorant to these things until, 2018. And
Yeah.
boy, have we learned some lessons, and Judicial Watch is doing a great job at bringing these things to the surface. So thank you for
Yeah.
doing that.
Thank you. Yeah, it's an honor.
Well, there are so many things happening around this country right now. We haven't gotten into foreign policy, which we won't today. That's some stuff that Americans need to talk about because it's a mess.
Yep.
Russia, Ukraine, now Poland. We have Belarus involved in topics. Bulgaria. Bulgaria should never be talked about in world politics ever. Israel, Palestine. We have all these things happening right now, and now we have people getting shot in public forum.
Yeah.
For literally one who praises Jesus Christ on a daily basis, who's our
Yeah.
Lord and Savior. And this country is at this really difficult boiling point. And I think it's going to get worse over time because we need to know the truth. I think the reason we're at a boiling point is because nobody really knows what's happening. And until that happens, I think America is going
Yeah.
to be so it's up to folks like you, folks like me who have, you have a big influence, I have a little influence. It's just to remain
Yeah.
calm and down the middle and looking at events and doing what you've been doing for quite some time is just saying, here's what happened. Here's what these people are saying. Here's what these people are saying. You decide for yourself. Like your book.
Yeah.
Here are the events that happened. Here's the proof. Here's the facts. You decide whether or not this is lawful. And that type of reporting, these types of books are extremely important to the entire future and the nature of this country, which is supposed to be transparent. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah. Thank you. You as well. I mean, independent media is so, so crucial these days. I mean, that's where people are getting their news, right? And people are fleeing from mainstream media to come to channels like yours. So thanks for doing what you're doing.
Well, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, our time is here. This has been so great. Christina, tell people how everyone can follow you, how they can get your book, everything about you. Let us know how we can keep in touch.
Yeah, thank you. You can go to ChristinaBobb.com. That's my website to check it out. You can order from Amazon, Barnes and Noble, wherever books are sold. You can find me on Instagram and X at Christina_Bobb or Truth at Christina Bobb.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. Thanks for writing the book. I can't wait to get it and my fake books. Maybe I'll get my
Yes.
fake books later today as well, or on
No,
Thursday.
return them. Return them.
Oh, I'm definitely returning them. Absolutely. Well, Christina, thank you for being here. And as always, God bless you. God bless this country. And we'll see you next time here on the Rice Report. Have a good
Thanks,
one,
Eric.
everybody.